Once again, welcome to tonight. If you do not have a range account, if you were with us on the 17th for the file hashing, you can just fire up that range we used that night. Just go to uscyberrange.org and you should be able to fire up that range. If you were not, or you need a range, regardless, right here is this login.uscyberrange.org/registration, and you can use that code right there. Kind of an easier one tonight to type in, no letters or numbers that kind of look vice versa. It's in chat. Bartles and Sinead have both pasted that in the chat, so you can copy it from there. But let's get those ranges fired up. We are looking for those power buttons. State's initials, if you're able to, like I've said, put your state's initials in front of your name. You've got, I'm working out of North Carolina. I've got Bartles and Sinead here with me tonight, co-presenting, and Sinead is out of Louisiana and Bartles is out of Texas. So we kind of cover the kind of southeast little portion down there, but we love to see where everybody else is from. Sorry for those on the West Coast. I know it's kind of an earlier workshop for you. I guess I can say the same for the East Coast. As East Coasters, it's a little bit of a late workshop. So only time that seems to work, that's after everyone's school, before everybody goes to bed. So it's kind of just an awkward time to cover all 4 time zones right there. Our emails, please don't hesitate to ever ask us questions after this workshop. Obviously, we're not going to really be responding to too many emails during the workshop, but after the workshop, please, by all means, here are our 3 emails. It is our first and last name at cyber.org, which I believe John or Bartles actually has John, just John, if you don't want to spell out Johnathan anymore. So you got both me, John, and Sinead or Bartles that you can kind of send questions to. Please don't ever hesitate to ask us questions. Okay. If you need that code, here is the code. This code will go dead here in about an hour. So if you're watching the recording at a later date, obviously not tonight on the 27th, if you're watching this recording and you need a range environment, you're gonna have to email Sinead, Bartles, or I, and we'll get you set up with a range environment. Like I said, this code will go dead here in about an hour. It'll kind of be shut down. So otherwise, then anybody could go through and add environments. Next thing we know, our bill might be thousands of dollars. So we shut that down halfway through the night. All right. Lastly, and I don't know if you noticed when you signed up, there was the note with it of this is going to be a very fast-paced workshop. When I sent out the email yesterday evening or afternoon, I tried to put the first bullet point of, please note, this is going to be not a standard cybersecurity workshop that we run. It's going to be very fast-paced. We want to stress right here, we are not leaving anybody behind, okay? We have just a lot to get through for 2 hours. We didn't want to make a workshop longer than 2 hours, so we have a lot to get through. Everything is being recorded. Everyone's going to have access to the recording. Everybody has access to the environments. So if for something breaks on your screen, say that I'm presenting, something breaks, you are more than welcome to go to Sinead and Bartles to try and help you. Please don't come to me, I'm the one talking, but talk to them in chat, send them a private message. If it's something quick, they'll get you back up and running and get you back on pace. But if it's something that, hey, maybe might take a little bit more time, we might have you pause and wait until basically another time that you can catch up. These little red lines I have under here over on the right. So after the backdoor removal and after the privilege escalation, those are kind of what we call the restarting points. If you messed up, that's where you can basically rejoin us, okay, without completing everything before. This backdoor removal, at that point, it's like we start over, so you can kind of redo it right there. Are we in the fixed rate cyber range? Yes, we are in the fixed rate cyber range, so we can talk about that more later on. But yeah, just know that these 2 red lines, these are 2 spots where we're gonna be like, all right, if you fell behind, here's where you can catch back up. Okay, so we're not totally leaving everybody behind. If there's an error, we're not going to make it 2 hours just to hear much, but just know that those are 2 spots where you can catch back up if something goes wrong in them. Okay, but just I want to reiterate, we are not leaving anyone behind. Everything's being recorded. That recording can be accessed tomorrow. If you don't know how to access it, it's on the Cybersecurity Workshop Series Canvas page. You can always feel free to email me. You can email me a year from now and I can get you the recording. Just let me know. We'll get you the recording, okay? And work at your own pace at that point, okay? We have this note here. If you were one of these 3, or I could put a 4th here, or don't feel comfortable, something like that. If this is your first, maybe second cyber.org cybersecurity workshop, we're going to move at a much faster pace. If you're not used to watching both our screen and your own, and you can't kind of joggle between the 2 or whatever, you're struggling to keep up with us. If you're new to the US Cyber Range, you've never touched the US Cyber Range, please by all means just watch today. Or if you're new to Linux, if you're not comfortable working through Linux, I would highly recommend just watching today. All 3 of these, any of this, or you're just not comfortable working at our pace, I would highly recommend watching today. You can ask any questions via the chat. We do have mics muted, just because we're going to move a little bit quicker today. But ask any questions via the chat. And then later on tomorrow, next week, something like that, then go back with the recording with the same lab environment, and you're able to work at your own pace. Okay, so that's what we're going to stress here is like I said, we're not leaving you behind. It's just a very fast-paced workshop, and we're worried for those of us that maybe be our first or second workshop, or you're just not up to speed with us working. That's just what we're going to recommend for today. Okay, Bartles, Shanae, anything to add on that, or have I pretty much covered it pretty well? Or I'll take silence as a good thing. All right. If we do the backdoor labs every time, should we do the removal each time? Robin, hey Robin, welcome back. That's really up to you. It's really up to how you run it in your classroom. The actual backdoor, if you shut it down, not the rat or the bot, that one will keep talking back anytime we restart. But the backdoor, if you shut it down without actually rerunning that program, which I don't know why a user ever would, it's never actually going to re-talk back. So it's fine if it just sits on the system. It's just kind of like a dead program or something sitting there. So okay. Well, with that, if you need an environment or something, please let us know. Last note I'll give to everybody is if you need help or something today, and let's say Bartles is talking, like I said, maybe don't send him a private message. He's not going to be able to help you right away. Message either Shanae Robinson or me. We'll be the two that are currently not talking at the time, and we'll be able to help you via a private chat more out right then. Okay, so just be wary of who's talking. It's hard for us to be presenting and troubleshooting at the same time. So as my wife always says, I'm terrible at multitasking. So that would be really impressive multitasking. So just keep that in mind of who's ever presenting at the time. Okay, we'll be passing around between presenters here, but okay. So let me go ahead, open up my cyber range. So I doubt everybody has as many as this, but we are in the January and February PD environment. Okay, this kind of the dual environment here, and let's see, everybody's ranges should be fired up. Ours is already fired up. We're going to work off of there, but I was going to fire that one up. But I see everybody's firing up. I see one stopping here. A few other ones. I'm going to hit these power buttons just in case you're new today, but hopefully those get started soon. We are going to be working with backdoors. We have a lot to go through. Okay, so let me kind of talk about everything that we're going to do while these two other ranges fire up here. Everything that we're doing today, we are going to start with simply installing a backdoor. I'm going to call it the long route, or the route that more a malicious attacker is going to use. We're going to create it from almost scratch. There's going to be a program to help us out, but we're going to create from scratch, set a bunch of settings to it, and we're going to open a backdoor on this Windows system. From there, we're going to show that you do have complete control of that system. We're going to show a keylogger application. Bartles is going to run you through this, where you're literally going to capture all the keystrokes of that backdoor, or of that, basically the Windows user. Everything today, the Linux user is the malicious actor. Anytime we're in the Kali Linux side, you are the malicious actor. Anytime we're in the Windows 7 side, you are the victim today. Okay, so that keylogger is going to be the Kali Linux, the malicious actor, watching all the keystrokes of that Windows 7 user. Okay, after we kind of show the power of the backdoors when we're in there, we are going to show how to remove the backdoor. So we're going to show how that Windows user can actually discover the backdoor. We're going to see it kind of moving around, and we're going to remove it. Okay, we're going to protect ourselves and delete that backdoor. From there, we're going to show you a shortcut, and we'll explain why at the time, why there's a shortcut exists. And for those of you who have taught our stuff, Robin, I saw you were on here, understand why the shortcut exists. It'll save you a ton of time in the classroom and allow you to do labs like the privilege escalation or the pass the hash. These two labs, so we just escalate basically break into the student system. The student doesn't have admin rights, so we do a privilege escalation. We escalate the privileges of the student. All of a sudden, now that student is admin on the system. That's not good enough for us. We want to log in as the admin. Well, here we do a pass the hash, and we're actually going to log into that system as an admin. From there, we will take it into the Rat Bot Lab, where we actually turn it into a remote access Trojan, where we are able to basically access that computer anytime we want. Even if they shut the back door down, we're going to be able to re-fire that back door back up. And then lastly, the rat removal, which I don't know if we'll get here in 2 hours, but we'll do our best, Bartles and I, but we will remove that rat, which takes a lot more work than the backdoor removal. Those things become a little bit of a pain to remove, but that's the goal of today. All by one little mistake of this Windows user, we are going to have a keylogger where it captures the keystrokes. We're going to escalate their privileges, where we basically make that student become an admin. Then we say that's not good enough. We log in as the administrator of that computer or system, turn it into remote access Trojan. So we're going to get through a lot today. Okay. With that, let's go ahead and run through the backdoor slide. So if you've never seen a backdoor before, a backdoor basically often say two things here. It avoids the normal login process. So like Windows uses the username and password. We're going to avoid that process. And basically, we're going to be able to access the system via a different method. It's not going to be the normal Windows GUI that we're used to seeing, almost like what you're seeing here on my screen. If I can make the, here we go, kind of this Windows background that we're used to seeing. That's not what we're going to have today. We're going to actually access it via a command line. Okay. Who is who? I kind of already said this. Anytime we are in the Kali Linux machine today, put your mindset in the malicious attacker. Anytime we are in the Windows 7 machine, you are the victim. Okay. To be honest with you, we're going to spend the majority of today in the Kali Linux machine. The Windows person makes or the victim makes one tiny little mistake that is going to allow this, basically this malicious attacker to kind of exploit that system. One thing to keep in mind with the US cyber range, I see Renee and I see the other Joe. If this is Joe Kuzak down in Texas, this is Renee from Colorado, and me in North Carolina, we cannot access each other's systems. I can't break into Joe's Windows machine or Renee's, and vice versa. They can't break into mine. We are separate. While we are all on AWS servers, we are in a bubble by like security rules. So we can't attack each other's machines. So just keep that in mind. If you use my IP addresses, it's not going to work on your machine. Okay. So be careful. Any IP address I type in today is going to be different for you. Okay. The Backdoor Lab. How are we going to do this? And it's pretty simple. We're going to create a backdoor. We are going to disguise as a Trojan. We have that in quotations because you are playing the role of the victim as well. So there's no need to really disguise it today, but we can talk about how that can be done. We are then, once that basically that backdoor is set, we're going to start sniffing or waiting for that backdoor to be opened. Okay. Once the victim makes their mistake, they download it and open that basically that payload. That backdoor is created. At that point, we have full control of their system. We can do whatever we want. So it's just one little mistake and we have full control. Once we're in there, we're going to explore options and kind of go through a lot of other things today. Okay. Some terminology before we get started. And I don't expect you to be an expert on any of these for now, but some terminology. MSF Venom, it's going to be the first thing we type in. That is basically how we create the payload. MS stands for Metasploit. You kind of see it right here. Venom, or I'm sorry, MSF stands for Metasploit Framework. It's kind of their entire program. The Venom is kind of their payload. You think of like the venom for a snake, it's going to be their payload. So it's the Metasploit Venom or that payloads that we're going to be able to create that backdoor for the machine. Metasploit contains all of these programs and everything. So you'll hear us say Metasploit a lot. We're going to go into Metasploit and use it today and everything like that. Meterpreter is how we are going to interact with the backdoor. So this is like the Windows GUI of how we're kind of clicking around, but instead we're going to use Meterpreter to interact with Windows. And then finally, you're going to hear us say Apache. That's just the server that we're kind of using to host files so the Windows user is able to download basically those malicious files onto their machine. Okay, so just a little server on the Linux side that we're able to do it. Okay. If you want to follow along right now, I believe a lot of our labs today run off of 1.2.3. So in the course, here we go, Trojans, backdoors, and rats. Here we go. 5 of the 8 labs today are located within this lesson 1.2.3 right here. Okay, so we are going to get started. The first one we are going to do is this lab backdoor, where you're going to create that, basically that backdoor payload and have that user open it. So any questions so far before we get started? By all means, please post it into chat. Bartles and Shanace will be monitoring that as I talk, and then as they're presenting, I'll be monitoring as well. So any questions, please don't hesitate to put those in chat. But with that, Bartles, Shanace, we good? Thumbs up. Good to go to get started. All right. I hate to talk too much. 15 minutes of talking so far. So what I'd like everybody to do is let's go to the US cyber range. If you're working with us, let's go to the US cyber range. You should be here and you should see a play button now. Okay. This is going to allow us to open up our environment. So I'm going to click the play button and then I'm going to click the kali.example.com. This is going to load up my Kali environment. Okay, so you should see your Kali environment load up. I hope everyone's seen this before. If you've never seen this before, like I said, I highly recommend just watching at this point. I see a thumbs up. Thanks for me. I highly recommend, if you've never seen this before, watching at this point. So this is the US cyber range. Welcome, but we're on the Kali side. And then the other one, sorry, as I arrange things on my other screen here. The other one, we're going to go back to the range here. Press the play button again and open up that target.example.com. This will load up the Windows 7 machine. All right. always like to have them over here, or my Windows on my right, Kali on the left. That's just personal preference here. Here we go. If you get a message that says basically it's not genuine, do you want to authenticate it? Click no on that or ask me later. We're not going to type in a code for that. Okay. All right. So I have my Kali machine and I have my Windows machine. If you remember back to that PowerPoint, I'm actually going to exit out of it. The first thing that we are going to do, excuse me, the first thing that we are going to do is create that payload. So let's open a new terminal. We're going to create it in the terminal. So open a new terminal with this top left-hand little box up here. And I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little bit better. Shrink that a little bit. There we go. It's a little bit larger. Bartles might mess up on your screen, but you can shrink it down. Okay. And the first thing I want to do, and let's make sure everybody's working here, is we're going to navigate to the desktop. So change directory desktop, where that desktop has a capital D. Okay. I'm going to hit enter. So CD space and then desktop with a capital D. This navigates us to the desktop. You should know that you're on the desktop by this ~desktop right there. Okay, that tells us that we are on the desktop. All that I want, or the reason we do this, is when we create the basically the file here, the backdoor file, we want that to appear on our desktop right here. Okay. That first command I told you was MSF Venom, Metasploit Framework Venom. It's going to create the backdoor. So MSF Venom, and there's a whole lot of things here that we have to specify. The first being is, what do we want the actual payload to be? And I'm going to type in the payload and then kind of walk us through what it was, but it's a flag lowercase p, so a dash lowercase p, and then it's going to be a Windows x64 interpreter, and then reverse underscore HTTP. And we might get the question right now, why are you choosing to use HTTP? We chose to use HTTP because when it comes to the backdoor removal, which we're going to do in 2 labs from now, the HTTP works better than the TCP. Okay, we get asked all the time, why do you choose this over this? Both of them work, the TCP or HTTP. We choose to use the HTTP now because it works better with the backdoor removal. And we can kind of explain that more as we get there. I know that might be confusing of, what is Joe talking about, TCP, HTTP? That's just kind of the protocol of how it's actually talking to these machines back and forth. HTTP, pretty common, kind of think about web traffic. TCP, a little bit different, maybe never seen that before, but that kind of just as important, or if not more important. So, but we can kind of read this. We are attacking a Windows machine. It's going to be a 64-bit Windows machine. We are going to use Meterpreter to interact, and we're going to have them talk to each other using an HTTP protocol. Okay, that's pretty much what that's saying right there. That is the payload we're going to install. That's what's going to install on the Windows machine. Okay. There are 2 things we have to tell this. We have to tell it what machine to talk back to and where on that machine to talk back to. Okay. At this point, it knows to basically talk back, but it doesn't know where to talk back to. So we have to tell what machine and where on that machine. So we're going to say L host equals, that is an L, not the number 1. That is an L, a lowercase L. That's a listening host or local host. I've heard it both ways. I think listen is the proper term. Okay. And what we need now is we actually need this Kali machine's IP address. So I'm going to actually open another terminal to get that IP address. Let me zoom in on it. So I opened a new terminal. I left the other one open. Whoops, if I can do this right. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type the command hostname flag capital I as in Indiana. Hostname flag capital I as in Indiana. I'm going to hit enter here. And this is my Kali IP address. Now, one thing I want to note, or want everybody to note here, is it's going to start with 10.1, and then it's going to have 2 different numbers than mine. You should see a 10.1 and then 2 different numbers. Notice mine's 113 and 7. Yours is going to be 2 different numbers there. Just keep that in mind that your 2 numbers will not be the same as mine. Okay. I'm going to kind of slide this down so I can see it. That's a host name flag capital I. So going back to my MSF Venom script here, kind of command I'm typing in, L host equals, I'm going to type in 10.1.113.7. Okay. Remember, your IP address should be different than mine. They actually can't be the same because we all live in the same VPC on AWS, so they actually can't be the same IP address here. So 10.1.113.7, whatever number spit out with hostname flag I, Then we're going to put a space L port equals, and this is going to be the listening port. So we told it to talk back to the Kali machine. We have to tell it where on this Kali machine. If we are using the lab that is on cyber.org on our cybersecurity course, that uses port 1717. By all means, use whatever number you want here. It can be anything between 1 and 65,535. You got a lot to choose from. I'll stick with the lab and go with port 1717. Now I'm going to shrink this so it starts to wrap around. Sorry. So you can kind of see it has the L host. There we go. The 7 L port at 1717. And then the last two things that we have to tell this is what file format do we want this payload to be in? It can be a Python file. It can be an ELF file. It can be all sorts of HTML script. It can be all sorts of different files. We're just going to simply use this as an executable file, or that exe file. So that's a flag lowercase f dash lowercase f for format, exf for an executable file. And then the output flag lowercase o, it's a lowercase o. And this is where you can call it whatever you would like. I think the lab calls it Trojan.exe. Please don't ever open a file that someone emails you called Trojan.exe. But yeah, I believe the lab uses that. But this is where we have to call it something. And if you've ever been in a workshop with me, you know that I love panda bears. So let's call it panda.exe or whatever you'd like to call it. Just remember whatever you call it right there. That's just going to be the name of the file. Just remember whatever you call it. If you're following with me, you can by all means call it panda.exe. Okay. This is the entire command. Let's go ahead and before we hit enter, double, triple check it, because this is where most of the errors come from. So let's double, triple check things. You should do this in your classroom if you run it through with kids. Make sure MSF Venom is spelled correctly, all one word. That's a flag lowercase p dash lowercase p. Windows x64 interpreter and reverse underscore TC, or I'm sorry, HTTP. We're not using TCP. Okay, make sure everything's spelled correctly here. Interpreter can be a tricky word to spell. We're not really used to typing in that word. A lowercase x64, just make sure everything's spelled correctly there and smushed together. That is a underscore right there. L host, L is in Louisiana host. There can actually be no spaces between this. This has to be all smushed together. No spaces from that L to that 7 or whatever your last number is. That has to be all one, basically one character or whatever, or one string of letters. It can't have any spaces in there. Same for L port, no spaces here. Starts with L, ends with whatever number you chose to go with. We chose 1717. Dash lowercase f, space, and then exe. And then dash lowercase o, it's a lowercase o, not a 0. And then whatever you call it here, I call it panda.exe. If you feel comfortable that you typed this in correctly, go ahead and hit enter. And it should start to create that, basically that payload to, or that we're going to try and get the Windows user to install. Okay, so I hit enter there. I always forget, one of these will be the same. Is it the final size? Everyone should see 7168. Yeah, the 700 I think is the one that might not be the same. Some might have 700, some might have something different, but those don't really matter. But what you should see is here is that file on my desktop. Here is that panda.exe. You should see it appear on your desktop right there. Okay. Cool. There it is. What we want to actually do is we want to move it to a location that the Windows user can download it. And this is going to be our Apache server that we kind of talked or briefly discussed earlier. We're going to move it onto the Apache servers, basically where the files are stored, so that that Windows user can download it. And that's going to be done with a sudo or super user to do this. We're going to move that panda.exe file. So we're going to super user do this, move this file. In the location of the Apache server files, I don't expect you to know this unless you've worked with an Apache server before. It's just going to be var, it's going to be root var www and then HTML. Okay, so super user do this, move the panda file or this panda.exe, and that's going to be a space between the exe and that first /. That's going to be a / to signify root var www and HTML. Okay, you can hit enter there. And you should notice that that panda file has now been moved. It's no longer on the desktop. Okay. So super easy to do this, move the panda.exe. There is a space there. This moves it to our Apache server. so that the Windows user is able to download it. All we have to do now is start that Apache server, and that's simply done with a sudo service. If I can type, I really can't type. Apache 2 and then start. This, I like to read this command backwards. We are going to start the Apache 2 service. Okay. Start the Apache 2 service, and you do need to use super user rights for that, so that has a sudo in front of it. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter there. This starts the server. It is available for anyone out there to do this. If you were to do this on your own computer at home, if you have a Linux computer running beside you, this would be available for anybody in the world at that point. They can kind of access it. You might, if you're running through your home network, you might have to forward some ports or something like that for them to access that to your local network. But this would be available for anybody to go and download this malicious file across the world. So sometimes we do it in these workshops when we have time, where I have one running at my house, and we kind of, I show you that you can access it from there. I don't recommend ever accessing files like that you don't know of, but yes, you can access this. We are contained in a little bubble within this AWS server, so we're not going to be able to access this specific one except from your Windows 7 machine. Okay. So what have we done? We've created a payload. We moved it to the Apache server, and we started that Apache server. Well, now let's start listening. The kind of the malicious payloads there, but let's start listening to see if that's ever open, that file is ever open. So that's going to be with a sudo msf console. This is going to open up the Metasploit framework console. Sorry, I kind of did that kind of quick. That's a sudo, I'll type it down here again. It's a sudo msf console, right? Like that. MSF and then the word console. All that is one word, MSF console. Thank you, Sinead. That's basically super user do this, open up the Metasploit framework console. You should get a fun little banner up top. It looks like, I'm not really sure, is it a bull or a cow saying it? I'm kind of zoomed in here. But open that up, and you should see this MSF5 with us here, kind of signifying that we are in Metasploit now. Okay. Let's go ahead and use the use multi-handler command. Use multi-handler. Okay. Use multi-handler. I'm going to hit enter there. When you type that command in, I'll highlight it right here. You should see it come to exploit multi-handler right there. You'll see multi-handler in red once you type that in. What that's saying is, I always like to just say the handler, it handles the backdoors. Okay, so if let's say I sent this out, I see Jenny and Leslie. If both Jenny and Leslie were both to open up this malicious file, this handler is going to handle both of those backdoor sessions. That's kind of what it's doing there. So it's going to handle the backdoor sessions. Okay. All we have to do is we have to tell it all of the settings that we basically put into that malicious payload. So we have to tell it it's Windows x64 interpreter reverse HTTP. We have to tell it what machine it's talking to and what port it's talking to. Okay. And so that's going to be done with. We're going to set the if I can type. We're going to set the payload as Windows. If you remember what we typed in before, it's -x64 interpreter and then reverse HTTP, just like that. We're going to set the payload and just what we typed in before, Windows x64 interpreter and reverse HTTP. One thing I want to show here is if you type something in wrong, so let's say I got rid of this H, okay, instead of HTTP, it's just TTP, and I hit enter here. Notice that you will get an error. Hey, look, that value is not a valid payload. So if you get an error like this, just know that you typed in something wrong. Okay, so if I go back up and re-put that H in, it should tell you if you, so this first one here I typed in wrong. It gives, excuse me, it gives me that error code. This second one I typed in correctly, and notice it actually tells you the payload, and think math signals here, is set as that Windows x64 interpreter and reverse HTTP. Okay. We have to set our port. So set the L port of that listening port. Now remember, I set mine as 1717, so there's a space there. Set L port as that number, whatever you set your L port to. If you're following with me, that was 1717. So set L port as 1717. And then we have to set L host, or the listening host, as your IP address. Remember, it starts with 10.1, and then mine was 113.7. I still have it down here. Yours should be whatever your IP address is. Should start with 10.1 and then two other numbers. but set the L host as your IP address. Okay. So we set the payload, we set the L host, we set the L port. So what machine it's tying back to, what IP address. We can do a show options if you would like. Show options is just gonna kind of show basically everything that's happening here. It'll look a little better for you if you type in show options, but you notice it's saying we're running the multi-handler. Our payload is that Windows that reverse HTTP. Our L host is your IP address, that listener host name. And then your port number is that 1717. We don't need to type anything else in. Okay. All the options are set correctly. We can always check those. And then finally, once everything's good, you can just type in run and hit enter. The word run or exploit, either one. I usually like to use run because a little bit shorter than exploit. Run, enter. And you'll see that it started the handler on your IP address at your port number. Notice here's my IP address, and that's the port number I'm using there, that 1717. Okay. The attack's all set up. We have the file on our Apache server waiting to be downloaded, and we have the handler listening for someone to open it up. Let's go play the Windows user before I pass this to Bartles for the keylogger. Let's go play the Windows user. So skip over to our Windows machine, leave your Linux open, leave it running, leave that handler running on your Linux, and go to your Windows machine. So we are now on the Windows machine, and we are going to see the very tiny error that this Windows user makes. Okay. If you see this public to home network, we usually just recommend home just because it makes your system less vulnerable. In the real world, please, if you're ever in like a coffee shop or something, please set that to public. It is more firewall for your machine. But for the sake of making our Windows machine more vulnerable, let's click on home network if you ever see that. Not a big deal right now. Okay. So what we want to do now is let's go ahead and open up Internet Explorer. You can open up Google Chrome. Google Chrome is going to be a couple extra steps to do this because Google Chrome is going to be like, hey, there's something wrong with this file. We do not recommend downloading it. Like just a couple extra steps. So and actually they usually update those steps of how it goes. So it always throws us off when we're presenting. So we just noticed Internet Explorer will warn you less, so to say. So open up Internet Explorer, or as we'll sometimes call Exploder. And what we're going to actually do is you're going to go to the URL that is your IP address and then / whatever the name of that file you created was. Okay. So my IP address is 10.1. I believe it was 113.7. So 10.1.113.7. And then that's going to be a / I named mine panda.exe, panda.exe. Now, typically, how can this get basically given to a victim here? Typically, it's going to be something like a email with a link involved or something like that, or from a web page, you click on a malicious link, go somewhere. So typically the user or the victims aren't going to type this in, right? These are the links that those malicious actors have to figure out how to get the victims to kind of click on or go to. But once we type that in, it's 10.1.113.7, whatever your IP address is, / the name of it, minus panda.exe. Sorry if that's a little tiny to read right there. Hit enter, and notice it's trying to download that file. It's trying to download it. And look right here. So this one's not too scary. This comes up on any file. It says, hey, files on Internet can be useful or harmful. If you do not trust the source, do not run or save this software. Typically, most users will ignore this. So let's go ahead and click run. Here is the one that they are really trying to protect your system now. This publisher, basically Internet Explorer saying, we have no idea who this publisher is. The signature, there's no signature for this software. Look down here, no valid digital signature. Can't verify its publisher. We don't know where this comes from. Do only run this if you trust them. But how many times have we ignored this? Obviously, Windows 10 with the Defender and 11 does a little bit better than just this. Windows 7 was very lackluster with it. But we can go ahead and click run again. And we sit here and we're like, what is this panda.exe or whatever you call the file? And notice it's one of the most boring files in the world. Nothing really happened here. But if you go back to your Kali machine, notice at this point, there's a interpreter session open now. That's the only mistake that the Windows user made is they downloaded that file and they ran it. Okay, from there, they clicked that, they ignored the 2 warnings and run. and this session's open, you have complete control of the system now. Okay, the first command that I love everybody to type in before we give it to Bartles, he's going to run you through a keylogger, is just the simple question mark here. Okay, in your interpreter session back on Kali, when it's open, the simple question mark. Okay, and if for some reason the interpreter session didn't open, we're going to have a chance to reset here in a second. I'm not sure if anybody wasn't able to get it open. Feel free to message Shanace or Bartles. They might be able to help a little bit more, but hit the question mark button here in Meterpreter. And I love searching through this. So we hit the question mark. I'm going to run us through some of these, not all of them, but when I say you have complete control of the system, you have complete control of the system. Okay. I love this one here, hash dump. This dumps all the password hashes of the system. Here's a get system. It's going to attempt to elevate privileges. It will not work if you just type that in right now. The student user doesn't have enough rights for it to kind of escalate them even further. We have a play command. We could play an audio file on that Windows machine. That would be funny. You're sitting at home, someone has a backdoor open, all of a sudden they just start playing an audio file. We can access, that Windows machine's webcams. When Bartles and I do this live with students in the classroom, the one thing we always show them is I access Bartles' Windows 7 machine from North Carolina. He's down in Texas. And we'll actually just take a picture of Bartles sitting in Texas. And I'm here in North Carolina on my machine once I take it over. So yes, you can take over the webcam. Kind of scary. Do know that this is your Windows machine is on an AWS server. So there is no webcam attached to it. Okay, there's no webcam attached to it. Yes, Mr. P. That is the privilege escalation lab. That's the goal of the lab, is to download those hashes. We're going to show that here in about 30 minutes. You'll get to see how that's done. So we can access the webcam. We can access the microphone. We can record what's happening in their room. Here's some powerful ones. We can. What happened there? We can start to access their keyboard. We can start to look at their screen. We can see what they're currently looking at. If you want to be stealthy here, sometimes messing with the webcam isn't the most stealthiest thing because that light will turn on. So just keep that in mind. But we can start to basically take a screenshot of their desktop, see where they're working on. We can send mouse events. We can control their mouse. We can control their keyboard. We can actually shut their keyboard and mouse down, which is kind of interesting. And then you can only control their keyboard and mouse. So that's kind of cool. But with that, I'm not going to go too much higher. There's a lot of other things that you can do up here. You can start to download the files off their machine. You can encrypt the files on their machine. You can delete the files from their machine. You can upload other malware onto their machine and execute or run it. But what we're going to do here is Bartles is actually going to run you through these three right here. This key scan, start, stop, and dump, which is actually a key scanner. So he'll actually run you through that. So Bartles, now without taking too much of your introduction there, I'll pass it over to you, which I know you're going to take over this machine. So.
Yeah, give me a second while I hijack what you have.
Yeah, and Bartles, I love the question there by Leslie. If the user closes the browser, I know Shanace answered it, is the exploit still running? Can you show that, go to the Windows side and actually, when you're showing your screen, actually close out of that Internet Explorer and show that it is actually still accessing that kind of backdoor there, is still open?
Yeah, so on your Windows side, I just close out of that. I still have this interpreter session open. Do you want me to run anything real fast, or just we'll see it when I run our key scan?
Yeah, I say just let's do the key scan.
So if you do want to download the PowerPoint that has the lab for this aligns with Objective 1.2.9, the keyloggers, and we're looking at the keylogger application, not the intro to keyloggers. As Joe said, we're going pretty fast. He's already done us the favor of setting up a backdoor. So from here, since we are in this interpreter session, as he mentioned, we can run the command keyscan _ start. So in our interpreter session, we want to run the command keyscan _ start. What it lets us know is it started the keystroke sniffer. So all it's doing is it's waiting for keystrokes.
Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Share, and I should be able to reconnect. And that should give me the Kali side. There we go. And then, oh, I'm still in Windows. Oh, no, there it is. All right. Reconnect here. And what I want to show you, 0, 5 plus 2, there we go. What we are going to do now is, so we have run that, we are going to do the backdoor removal now. So one thing I love to show is how do we shut this backdoor down? We have it open. We can, like I said, still take control of this machine. If I wanted to run a key scan _ start again, it's going to work here. We can kind of start to control the machine, do whatever we want. But what I want to show is how does the Windows user, how are they actually able to shut this down? So I'm going to go to my Windows side. And what I want us to do is we're going to open up a basically a program called the Resource Monitor. So if you hit the Start button and you search for Resource Monitor, hit the Start button, Resource Monitor, hit enter there. So Resource Monitor, I did the Start button, typed in Resource Monitor. And what you can do here is if you click on the network and then TCP connections, basically what is the network activity going in and out here? Okay, what network activity is going in and out? What you can notice here is there's that panda.exe file right there, okay? Remote address 10.1.113.7. Notice it's talking on the remote port 1717. We can actually see that connection happening of the two machines talking right there. Okay, you can actually see it talking. It's actually not very, what I want to say here, it's not very sneaky of the malicious actor because, hey, why is that Panda, that little program that did nothing, why is it talking to a remote address? So actually one of the first things that a malicious actor is going to do when they basically install a backdoor script is they're going to have it run what's called a migrate. We're going to try and migrate to some other process. Okay, that panda.exe kind of, it sticks out kind of like a sore thumb. One thing that I like to do is what happens if we migrate this connection to the file explorer, that explorer.exe, the backbone of Windows? What if we migrate it to that? And so what I mean to that is that malicious files, it's no longer attached to that panda.exe file. It's going to, or program, it's actually going to be on that file explorer, which file explorer, we're not really sure what all that does. It's talking to random things, but we're going to put it on the backbone of Windows. So what I like us to do is let's go over to our Kali machine. And I'm going to have you run the command PS here, which is going to list all the processes. PS to list all the processes. There's going to be a lot. So just PS and hit enter. There it is. There's a ton of them here. You can look for the explorer.exe file if you want and kind of use the number. It's that left, right, or leftmost number right there. But what we can actually do is we can run a pgrep and actually search for it. So pgrep, P-G-R-E-P, and then we're going to search for explorer.exe. So pgrep explorer.exe, and that should bring back one number. It should not be the same number as mine. Mine came back as 1676. Chances are it could be that same number, but chances are it's something different. Okay, so that is the process ID of File Explorer, basically that backbone of Windows. What I want to show us now is let's actually migrate to that. If I can type correctly, migrate. This is going to move this backdoor session from that panda.exe to explorer.exe. So we're going to migrate to 1676, whatever that number was for you. We're going to migrate to that process. Okay. You can hit enter. Might take some time here, making me a little nervous, but it should migrate over to, and it should say, basically, it migrated successfully. There we go. Everybody's able to migrate over. So now it's working off that explorer.exe. So what we can show here is if we go back to the Windows end, we can kind of watch this. What you should notice is that Panda get dark gray or whatever, it kind of grayed out. It's no longer active, but it did happen at some point, but it's no longer active. But notice there is the explorer.exe. It is now talking to the remote, basically IP address on that remote port of 1717. You kind of see it kind of working there. Okay, it kind of moved with it. One thing to kind of know here is we could shut down explorer.exe and it would close this backdoor. But it would also kind of ruin our Windows image. Windows 10, it'll kind of like restart after a little bit, the File Explorer does, but it doesn't here on Windows 7. So we're not going to shut down Explorer. So we're actually going to migrate this over to something else. We're going to do it to the calculator, which is always kind of funny. We're going to open up the calculator.exe file. So let's go play the Kali user again, or the Kali malicious actor. And what I want us to do here is it's going to be kind of a funny thing. We're going to open up the calculator in Windows. So we're going to do an execute flag F, and we're going to do calc.exe. That's the calculator program in Windows. We're going to open up, basically execute that file that's titled calc.exe. Okay, execute that file called calc.exe. It's going to just start the calculator. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Notice it starts the calculator. It's going to call it the process 2940. Your process ID number is probably something different there. But if you go to Windows, you should actually see the calculator open. You go over to the Windows side, it fired it up. Okay. Back on the Kali side, basically all we're going to do is we're going to migrate to that ID. So we don't have to search for it. If we did a pgrep calc.exe, it would show us that same number. But we're just going to do a simple migrate to 2940. Migrate 2940. Or whatever your number was. Sorry, I shouldn't say 2940. Whatever, when you started that calc program, whatever that ID number was right there. Migrate to that number. Okay. Now we should be working off of that calc.exe program. So notice here, there it is. It is now talking to my remote port. I guess something interesting here. It's actually, oh no, there's calc. I was reading the wrong thing. That's why. It is talking to the remote port, or my remote IP address, my Kali IP address, on that port 1717 still. If we were to close out of this calculator, that would close the backdoor connection right there. But one thing that I always like to show is up top up here. Now that you notice, hey, this calc is talking to something weird. Why is my calculator talking to something else? It doesn't need to talk to something external. So you can up here, right click on calculator or calc.exe and just simply press that end process right there. And that actually shuts the backdoor down. Okay, that's the simple way to shut these backdoors down. That's going to simply just shut it down. Okay, if we go back to the the Kali side now, if we try to do anything, if we try to list all the processes with a PS, it's not going to be able to return anything to us. You'll notice that that connection is shut down. It's going to kind of like time out over, oh, I don't know. It takes usually about a minute, minute and a half, and it'll time out here. So any questions so far? Let me have my chat open here. I don't see anything here. Yeah, there it is. So timeout error. It's actually shut down. That's why that backdoor was not working. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to show a shortcut. So the entire first lab of that backdoor lab is now going to be a little bit quicker with Bartles run through a shortcut lab. So with that, Bartles, I'll pass it back to you. Do we want to take a 5-minute break, Bartles, or are we good?
I was going to say, do we want to shut down the US cyber range real fast? Take a quick break?
We shouldn't need to do that. But we have to shut that down here after 2 more labs, but I say we're fine leaving it open. But take a 5-minute break sound good? 5-minute break, yeah. We'll give you a little bit more than 5 breaks or 5 minutes. How about 3 after? I know that's a random time, but about 8:03 Eastern time we'll come back. So about 8-minute break, we'll come back then and get fired up. Does that sound good to everybody? So let me type that. What PowerPoint is next? I just got the question. So backdoor shortcut. It's actually up in the resources, but we'll come back about 3 after. So I'll type that in here. Coming back at 8:03 Eastern. No man coming. Let me see if I can type that in a few times so that everybody can see that if you kind of see it. You're coming back at 8:03 Eastern. So I'll go ahead and pause my video, but we'll see you back here in a couple minutes. As everybody comes back, as a reminder, this is a restart point right now. I know we briefly talked about those earlier, but this is a restart point. So if for some reason something broke or went wrong, we actually have everything shut down right now. This is actually the backdoor has been closed. The Windows user closed it down. So this is a restart point. So if you got lost or something basically went wrong on your screen, here is a point where you can restart. So Bartles, with that, I guess pass it back to you. We're going to kind of work on that backdoor shortcut lab. So let me exit out and pass it to you.
Just intercepting your stuff real fast. There we are. All right. So on the Windows side, I'm just going to close out of this resource monitor just so I've got a nice clean screen on the Windows side. And then over here on the Kali side, like Joe said, since this is a restart point, I am going to run the command exit within this terminal with our Meterpreter session. So it shuts down Meterpreter. And then after a few seconds, and then a few more seconds, there we go. Run exit one more time, just so I'm back at this student at Kali. And for those, if you did get lost, I'm just going to close out of this. So it's like a nice, clean terminal here and get zoomed in so it's easier for everyone to see. What do you do? 3 zoom ins, Joe? Yeah, that looks right.
Typically, yeah.
Okay. So if you did happen,
too small for you.
if you did happen to close out of that, we just want to navigate back to the desktop. So remember that's CD and then desktop with a capital D. So the scripts that we want for this backdoor shortcut, we have these on GitHub, and the command to download that is git clone. And then the website is https://github.com/ and it's cyber-org. Slide that over just a little bit. One more / and then backdoor. So git clone https://github.com/cyber-org/backdoor. And Joe has a good point of showing, like, if you happen to make a typo here, what's going to happen, and don't make this typo, I'm just showing you, if it's asking for a username and password, it's because something's been typed wrong. I'm surprised it actually gave us a folder though, Joe.
It's trying to find that folder called Backdoor without the R.
Yeah. So if it is asking for a username and password, what that means is you made a typo somewhere. What it should do, if everything is typed correctly with our command here, very quickly, because this is a very short, it's actually 2 scripts. We have one for installing a TCP connection with a backdoor and one with an HTTP connection. But we can see, since we did change to our desktop, we've got this backdoor folder on the desktop here. So since we had already used HTTP, we'll be installing a TCP backdoor, and it's also going to be better to have a TCP connection for our, is it the privilege escalation past the hash, which need the TCP connection, Joe? You're on mute, buddy. I'm just going to assume that was a yes.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
All right, so now that we've got this backdoor folder downloaded to our desktop, we want to navigate into this. So CD and then backdoor. We could actually take a look at what's in here with an ls command. We could look at each of the scripts, but because we are, really trying to cram a lot into a short amount of time, we'll just run the command change mode +X. I want to make this an executable. Backdoor _TCP _script.rc. So change mode, that's CHMOD, and then a +X, then backdoor _TCP _script.rc. Now that we've made this script executable, we can actually execute the script with a simple command. We do need super user privileges to do so. So sudo, and then a dot and a /, and then that backdoor _TCP _script.rc. It autofilled very quickly because as soon as I typed BAC, I can just tab autocomplete because that's the only executable script I have within this folder. We hit enter. And because of the way that the script is written, it's going to do everything that Joe had just shown us in terms of creating a payload, moving that payload to the Apache server, starting the Apache server, running MSF console, and getting us into interpreter session. All we have to do now is go back to play the victim. So back on our Windows side here. Again, as Joe had mentioned, it works a little bit nicer to run this file through Internet Explorer. And I did happen to see Joe give a little fist pump. I know that's not for my presentation. That has to be something with the men's soccer team scoring a goal.
1-0.
1-0, okay. So remember, we want to go to your Kali IP address. What was this, Joe? 113.7, that was yours. Yeah, 113.7. And then this one with the backdoor shortcut is actually TCP Trojan.exe. That's the way it's named in the script itself. So TCP Trojan.exe. Assuming you have typed your Kali IP address correctly and spelled out TCP Trojan.exe correctly, you'll get your pop-ups for run. And if we go back to our Kali side, we can see that we actually do have our interpreter session up and running. So from here, we could redo a keylogger application, or Joe can show us how to run a privilege escalation attack.
We were actually asked about earlier, right? Of how do we get a hash number? Because we're going to show that it actually doesn't work here. But let me steal your screen bar. Let me try and reconnect here. There we go, right screen. So I'm connected, reconnect. There we go. Okay, so we have the interpreter session open. This backdoor shortcut actually is one of our quote unquote newer labs, because what we noticed from feedback from teachers, and I believe if Robin's still on here, she would have been one of them, is basically to open that back door. You saw it took us 30, 40, 45 minutes-ish today to do that. With kids in the classroom, could take even a little bit longer. Errors happen. You got to start fixing the kids' errors. You just don't have time. Some teachers who only have a 50-minute classroom or less to basically do this like privilege escalation lab and the backdoor at the same time. So we created that backdoor shortcut that after you show the kids the backdoor, the shortcut kind of runs through all the scripts for you. So that it only takes 2-3 minutes to open the backdoor, and then you're able to show something like this privilege escalation lab. That's the purpose of it right there. Okay. One thing I like to show, the backdoor is open here. Bartles, you can see my screen here, the thumbs up. Yeah, if I do a hash dump, which is going to try and dump that SAM file or the password hashes of the Windows machine, notice that it says operation failed. What this means, you have privileges. We do not have the privileges. This student here at get UID, if we run that, we're just logged in as the student. We don't have the privileges to get that hash dump. Okay, you can try it there. It's just the simple command hash dump. What we are actually going to do is escalate the privileges of this Windows user, this student, so that they are able to access that hash dump. Okay, and then from there, we're going to use that hash dump to log in as the administrator. That's kind of the long-term goal if you're kind of sticking with us here. Okay, open up chat here. I've been having it. There it is. It doesn't look like anything. So what I want to do here is what we're going to do actually. Run hash dump. Notice it didn't work. What I want to show here is we're actually going to background this interpreter session. We're going to keep it open, but we're going to background it. We're going to go back to Metasploit with this session background. So I'm going to take background. Notice it's backgrounding session 1. That number is actually important here. Okay, so we have to tell it basically which session that we are going to what's called bypass this user authentication controller, UAC. Okay, so take a note of that number. Mine was 1. Everyone should be 1 because we should only have 1 backdoor session opened at this point. We shut those other ones down. So it should be the number 1, but say that we didn't shut down the backdoor earlier. It might be backdoor or session 2 or 3 or something like that. Okay. What we are going to do now is we are going to search. So literally with the word search, we're going to search Metasploit for an exploit that's going to bypass the UAC or user authentication control right there. So we're going to search Metasploit for bypass UAC. Okay. So search Metasploit for bypass UAC. Hit enter there. It's going to actually bring up a lot. Ours should all be the same since we're all running the kind of same version here. No one's updated yet. So search bypass UAC. You should see 13. It starts with 0. 13 different exploits here. We are actually going to be using the very first one. It just happens to be the first one. And it's not always going to be the first one. When Bartles shows you here in a little bit, the past the hash, he'll actually show you that it's actually near the bottom. So, but we are using that first one that is number 0, the exploit Windows local bypass UAC. And so what you can actually do, notice it is the number 0. So we can actually just say use 0. Use 0. We're going to use that 0th one or result right there. So use 0. I'm going to hit enter. And what we should see here is that it's using the exploit Windows local bypass UAC. You should see there in red, Windows local bypass UAC. Okay. Make sure it says that right there, Windows local bypass UAC. Let's go ahead and do a show options. Let's see what all we have to set here, okay? The goal of this is to bypass that user authentication control and escalate the privileges of this user. Let's go ahead and show options. And there's a few things that we have to do here. We have to set the session number. That was that number when we backgrounded it, it gave us the number. So we have to set that as session 1. lhost is already set as our current IP address, so we don't have to set that. That should be your current IP address, so just leave that alone. Notice there's actually an L port here. It's set as 444. I don't see a need for us to change that. If we wanted to go back to 1717, we could change the L port, but we can just leave it as 444. And then finally, this is actually attacking at this point a Windows x86 machine. We're actually going to change that. So if we actually do a show targets, it'll give us the options here. So show targets. And our options are basically a 32-bit and 64-bit machine, an 86 kind of architecture right there, or a 64-bit machine. We're going to be specific. We are actually going to say set the target as 1. We're going to set it as a 64-bit Windows machine. So set target as a 64-bit. When you type in set target 1, you should see target is set as 1, which is that Windows 64-bit. We need to set the session. So set session. Mine backgrounded as session 1. I would assume almost everybody's did. If you saw a different number when you backgrounded it, that would be a different number here. But set the session as session number 1. I'm going to hit enter. And then finally, we actually have to set the payload. It will open a new background session. Notice our payload is set as Windows Meterpreter and reverse TCP. We're actually going to change that and add the x64 in there just to make it a little bit more specific because it works a little better. Okay, so we're going to say set payload, and we're going to do Windows, and we're going to stick with the same one Bartles just did. So 64-bit, so x64 Meterpreter, whoops, with a dash. Interpreter, man, I really can't type right now. There we go. And then reverse underscore TCP. Let me expand this out to see that a little bit. Come on now. There we go. All right. So set the payload as Windows x64 Meterpreter and reverse TCP. I'm going to hit enter. All right. So the only 3 things we did here, we set as a target 1, which is 64-bit Windows machine. We set it as the session that was backgrounded as, mine was 1. And then we set the payload as that Windows x64 Meterpreter and reverse TCP. From here, it should be as simple as running run. And it's going to actually attack that session and try and escalate the privileges. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to type in run and hit enter. So just run. And here it's trying to escalate the privileges. Notice now it opened up session 2. So we're actually in a new session. So we can read through all this. So user authentication is enabled. It's set to default. We can bypass it. Look at that. The user is now part of the administrator group. And here it's trying to upload the system. What we can do is we can still run a get UID. Notice we are still logged in as the student. We are still the student. But now, if we do a hash dump, whoops, that student has full privileges to download those hashes. Notice we have the password hashes of everybody on this system. One of the first times we ran this with a school's IT guy in there, and he goes, wait a second, so if a student was to make the mistake and download that file, at this point they have my password hash. He's thinking as the administrator they can get my password hash, and then we're like, oh yeah, just wait, there's more, we're going to have them log in as you. So we kind of scared the IT people here, but just the student, there's the student account. But what we're curious about, or what we want to see, is this administrator account, and Bartles is actually going to run you through a lab where you log in as that administrator. Okay, where you are going to log in as that administrator right there. Okay, but what I want to do is let's right click on our desktop here, and we are going to save these password hashes. Okay, so I'm going to right click, and notice when you right click, there's just a create document, an empty file. Okay, so right click on the desktop, create document, empty file. There's other ways to do this. Everyone knows the right click, kind of, it's a Windows feature too, but enter a file name. I'm just going to type it as, I'll make it more descriptive, w7 hashes.txt. We're going to save this to the desktop. Okay, so the Windows 7 hashes.txt. Okay, I'm going to open it, and I'm going to save these hashes in there. So here's I double click on it, opens up in a what's called leaf pad, a little word pad type thing here. And I'm going to highlight all of these hashes. One thing that's cool is all of the hashes are the same for all of us. So if for some reason this doesn't work for you, we can copy and paste this into chat, which we are going to do. But there, copy. I'm going to paste it in here. Man. Okay. So there's all the hashes. And what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to actually put the Windows IP address. We can actually know the Windows IP address of this Windows 7 machine from basically this interpreter session. Notice it opens it up. Here is my IP address on port 444. That's the Cali IP address. And it's opening it up on this remote machine, but it's actually telling me the IP address here. The first 4 numbers here, excuse me, are the Windows machine. So you should see 10.1 and then 2 other numbers. Mine kind of funny here. What's the name of that one? Same thing reversed, but 122 and then 221 right there. Okay, so I'm going to set it here. I'm going to say IP address equals 10.1.122.221. Remember, your number is going to be slightly different. Okay, but we have the IP address of that Windows machine. Okay, because what Bartles is going to do is he's going to walk you through the pass the hash, where we're going to use that IP address, and we're going to use this administrative password hash to break into that administrator account on that Windows machine. Okay. Everybody with me? Make sure you click File Save. File Save. Make sure the file saved and exit out of it. It should be stored on your desktop there. Stored on your desktop. You'll be okay. So what we're actually going to do now, just to prove to you, and this is actually a spot, this is our second part of the day, where everything, this is kind of a reset point. If you, for some reason, didn't get these hashes or anything, we can paste those in chat for you. We can get the IP address of the Windows machine from the Windows machine. We can just go and type in the IP config or IF config. I always forget which one it is for Windows. And kind of get it from there. But what we're going to actually do, and we're going to have everybody do this with us, just to prove to you that you don't need to have a backdoor session open, is we are actually going to go back to the US Cyber Range right here, and we are going to stop our machines. So go back and press the stop button. And what this is going to do is this is going to shut both machines completely down. What is the goal of this? The goal is to show you that every backdoor session will also be shut down as well. We do not need the backdoor session open for this to work. So press the stop button. I should start to see everybody stopping. Perfect. Okay. So press stop. This is going to take, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute for it to stop down. And then we'll press start again. And it'll take another 30 seconds to a minute and a half to fire back up. We'll see how the US Cyber Range is feeling. Hopefully it's not too grumpy and it fires right back up for us. But once they have stopped, you can press the power button again. Yeah, Mr. P, yeah. Kind of interesting to show that. Metasploit does do most of the work there, but you can kind of see that you can escalate the privileges. So hopefully it's stopping. No, I see. Looks like some of ours have already stopped. If yours has stopped and you're seeing the 3, or really just the power button, I guess you only have the option of power button. Go ahead and hit that power button. Mine has not stopped yet, which is okay, but it finally did. So there's the stop. I'm going to hit start to turn it back on. We should see these starting back up. Okay. Looks like only one's still stopping. Mary, sorry if that doesn't come back up soon. We'll try not to move too quick there. Okay, hopefully that stops soon. Oh, there it is, Mary. Okay, you can press the power button now. We should be good. Everybody else is starting back up. Once it starts back up, go ahead and click the both machines again, both the Kali and Windows 7. Okay, and with that, Bartles, I'll pass it back to you. You're going to take us through the past the hash labs. Let me stop sharing here. I'll monitor everybody's ranges and see if they fire up, but Bartles, pass it back to you.
Well, yeah, while this is starting back up, I think you didn't show the objective that the privilege escalation lab aligned with, which was 1.3.1, if you did want to download that one. And then the pass the hash is 1.3.7, if you did want quick and easy access to the PowerPoints. Honestly, I don't have them memorized like Joe does, where he knows every single one of the 100-some objectives. I have to Control F to get that.
You assume that I have all this memorized. You assume wrong. All right.
Hey, there we go. Now we see a play button. All right, so get both of our machines fired back up. And yeah, Joe's already done the heavy lifting for me. But like he said, if you had gotten lost, you want to pick back up, I will copy and paste the hash that we need to continue here into chat in 1 second. So notice here, since we did shut this down and we're opening it back up, it's literally like we've reset the computer itself. And here it was asking for my activation again with Windows. Just ask me later. Click OK. Now here's right where it's important, Joe, that we need to make sure that we are home, because if we are public, that's where we're going to have some problems here.
Yeah, this lab, yeah.
Okay, so in case you get that pop-up and it asks if you want home, work, or a public network, we want to click home because we don't want the firewall there. We want to be as vulnerable as possible. To really force that in, what we can do on this Windows side, again, within the Windows 7 virtual environment, not your host computer, click the Start button here. And in this Search Programs and Files, type Network. And one of these options is Network and Sharing Center. I know it's probably small and a little bit difficult to see, but we're trying to find this Network and Sharing Center. Click that to get that open. If this already says Home Network, we don't need to change anything. If it happens to say Public Network or Work Network, you can click that, see your different options here, and make sure you change that to the Home Network. Home Network. So back on the Kali side. So first I'm going to open up a terminal here, get zoomed in, just so it's, again, easy for people to see. And we want to get back into Metasploit. So remember that command is sudo msf console, sudo msf console. Always takes a second just to get that fired up. There we are. All right, so as Joe had mentioned, when he did a search for his specific exploit, it happened to be the first option, and he could just run U0. If you don't do a search, you can't just hit use because it has nothing to actually choose from. Here, we want to search for the exploit. So search ES and then EXEC. So search PS EXEC. We also happen to have 13 options here, but it's not the very first option here. If we looked here, this auxiliary admin SMB MS17, that's not the one we want. What we're looking for is this exploit /Windows /SMB /PSEXEC. You could type that all out, or we could just run use 10 because that aligns with option 10, even though it's the 11th option because it starts at 0. So use 10. So by default, it sets our payload to Windows interpreter /TCP. If we do a quick show options just to see what's already set up for us and what we need to set ourselves, we've got a few things here. So it does not have the remote host that we want to connect to. That's going to be the victim. It does have a port for us, 445. Scroll down. It does not have the username and password that we're looking for, or in this case, the hashed password. It does have our local host and our local port set up. So if you happen to remember what your Kali IP address was, that's already set for us, and it chooses port 4444. We could change the port if we want to, but we don't need to here. So from here, we need to set, again, the receiving host, the SMB pass, and the SMB user. So in chat, in case you did get lost and want to continue along, we will need this hash. So I'm going to copy and paste this. It happens to be the same for all of us. So copy chat here. See if that pastes appropriately. There we go. We'll need this in a second. And I am going to slide this over because I need this IP address. This is my remote host. Now everyone's is different because our IP addresses are different. Set our host. And then here you want to use the Windows 7 IP address that we got from the privilege escalation attack. So in this case, it's 10.1.122.221 for me. In case you did get lost, as Joe had mentioned, back on the Windows side. So this is only if when you were trying to do the privilege escalation, you got lost and weren't able to get the Windows IP address. On the Windows side, if I click Start and then CMD, so CMD, that'll open up a command prompt. I can run the command ipconfig. Again, I know this is small, but one of these options here is IPv4 address. And for me, it's displaying the Windows IP address, which is 10.1.122.221 for me. Again, that's if you wanted to follow along, you got lost and didn't happen to get the IP address through the privilege escalation attack. So we set our remote host and we can hit enter. We can see that is set for us. We need to set the SMB pass. So set SMB pass. And here's where we can copy and paste that hash. If you've got it from the chat, you can get it there. If you've got this saved in your text file here. Now the copy and paste, don't try to Control-C this. Think old school with just your right click. So highlight everything that starts at AAD and ends at 540. Right click and copy. go back to the terminal here and right click, paste. So I've got this SMB, well, set SMB pass, and then that long string for the hash there. Hit enter. We can see it's set the SMB pass as that hash. And then one final setting here is setting the SMB user. Now notice from privilege escalation, administrator is spelled with a capital A and everything else is lowercase. If you wanted to, you could copy and paste that if you're, as good at spelling as Joe and I are, because we're math majors and not English majors. Our spelling is sometimes atrocious. I'm going to trust myself and hopefully not misspell any of this. So set SMB user, and then that's administrator with a capital A. So administrator with a capital A. Hit enter here. So we've set a remote host as the Windows IP address, the SMB pass as the administrator's hash, and then the SMB user as administrator itself. Now, as Joe had mentioned, with the privilege escalation, he just added that little bit with the x64 just to make it work a little nicer here. We can make the same change. So set payload. Keep the same formatting since I have that capitalized. Set payload Windows /x64. And we've got our interpreter /reverse _ TCP. We're just including that little bit with the 64-bit, the x64 between Windows and interpreter. We could run a show options. Yes, thank you, Joe. Yep, Howie, if you misspelled the SMB user, you can just rerun set SMB user and spell it correctly. So with the show options here, we can see nothing has changed with the local host or local port. The SMB user is now administrator. It'll probably appear a little nicer. I'm zoomed in. That's why it's a little distorted here with some word wrapping. SMB pass is the hash there. It's got the receiving or the remote host, etc. So now that we have all this set, we can just run the attack with run. So this gives us the same issue as last time. No, there we go. We had a little hiccup earlier when we were testing this, and we just had to run a second time, and then it just worked. As long as we have the Windows machine set up with a home network, this will get everything connected for us. So we can see that it's connected here. It's authenticated. It's executed that payload there. Now, if we want to look at the credentials here, the command we can run here is get UID. And notice, we're now authority. That's administrator. We're no longer logged in as the student. We have passed the hash. So instead of being logged in as student, we're actually logged in as administrator. And with a command sysinfo, so one word, sysinfo, for system information, it gives us some good information here. It lets us know we're running a Windows 7 64-bit. The OS itself is Windows 7. It gives us some detailed information with Service Pack 1. Lets us know it's a 64-bit. I mean, it makes sense, right? We kind of knew that ahead of time and specifically chose the payload to be 64-bit. Gives us a interpreter session right there, x64, just Windows. Do we want to do anything else from here, Joe? Now that we have passed the hash, we have administrative privileges, we're logged in as the administrator.
Well, same thing, like the webcam and stuff isn't really going to work on an AWS server. They don't really have webcams attached to those that we can access. So not really. We're just showing that you can. I mean, obviously you can think in the real world here. If you're able to pass the hash or escalate privileges, like getting into the administrator group, terms kind of scary. I like we're all educators here. Now the same thing with the students. If you think back, technically the only mistake the students made is ran one file. I know we've done it twice, but technically they only had to do it once. And at that point, now we are able to log in as that administrator. So kind of scary if you're thinking from a kid standpoint. That kid, we always say that the workers are the weakest link, not your IT professionals. They have what companies can pay millions and millions and billions in security, but it takes just one person with admin rights or ways to get there to basically open a link in an email or something. It can bring your whole system down. So kind of showing that just that simple student account, now we're all of a sudden logged in as the administrator. So just kind of showing those. I guess I'll stop here, Bartles, before I take over. Do we have any questions to throw in chat of anything at all up to this point, or are we pretty good? We have 20 minutes. That's plenty enough to show the rat bot lab. I just don't know if we're going to get to that rat removal. So,
and I would like to show, since I'm at this point, yeah, I changed the settings on the Windows side, so it's actually a public network instead of a home network, which has a better firewall setup, to show you that if I'm back at this exploit before I hit run, because I hit exit to get out of that interpreter session. If I try to run from here, that firewall is going to stop me. That's why we needed to change this. So if you happen to forget to change to a home network and by default it went to public, this is the type of error we get because the Windows firewall is actually protecting the user.
Yeah, it's executing a process remotely, so that that firewall there is shutting it down to not let that on a public, because obviously we wouldn't want it for something like this. So yeah, great little show there, bro. So yeah, let me take over. I don't see any questions, so we're gonna quickly turn this into a rat bot. Not sure how much we'll be able to show here, but we'll show as much as we can. Sorry, I'm opening up those environments. Let me share my screen here. Share screen. Come on now. Doesn't like doing two things at once. There we go. So share screen. Here's my environment. You see my environments, Bartles, Shanace, thumbs up. You see it there. Perfect. So here we go. Bartles did shut down that interpreter session. That's good because that is actually logged in as the administrator there. So running the what do we want to call it here? Why can't I talk? Oh, turn this into a rat isn't going to work. But basically what we're doing now is we show that this is really easy for the Windows user to shut down. Let's make it really difficult. Let's make it so we can access it whenever we want. And that's going to be called it's going to be done with a remote access Trojan or a bot. But basically, we're going to access this, like I said, whenever we want, whenever the user wants to. So if I want to log in 2 weeks from now and kind of access it, we can. That's what we kind of call it bots here, because if you control 100 machines, say you want to run a larger attack at some point, use all 100 of those machines. Well, maybe a month from now is when you run the attack. If it's a rat, you're able to access that machine in that month, and then at that point run the attack. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. Now we are going to set this so that it kind of runs every 15 seconds. So we're going to kind of show how that's done right now. But what I'd like from everybody here is if you're in a Metasploit session, Meterpreter session like this, go ahead and type exit and it'll exit that Meterpreter session. We need to shut that down, especially if we're logged in as the administrator. Like I said, the rat won't really work right because we're not really going to log in as the administrator from that other end. But exit if you see Meterpreter. If you're in Metasploit, you can just type exit again. So basically just keep typing exit until it shuts down the terminal. Okay, exit, exit, exit until we shut down that terminal. Exit is kind of important here, so we want to actually shut down that backdoor. Okay. And what I want to do here is I'm going to actually exit out of this so we kind of start fresh. And I'm going to open a new terminal. And we're going to actually use that backdoor shortcut to open up the backdoor into the student so that we can turn it into a rat. Okay, but we're going to do the backdoor shortcut just to save us time. So if you open a new terminal, you should be at tilde right there. You just see the little tilde. If we do a change directory desktop / backdoor, that should put us into that backdoor folder. Okay, so change directory desktop backdoor. When you hit enter there, you should now see desktop. Remember, desktop has a capital D. Backdoor is all lowercase. You should notice when you change directory, you're kind of seeing here the tilde, our home directory, then desktop backdoor. if we do an ls here, notice that that backdoor TCP script.rc is right there. Okay. And I believe this should still work if we just run a sudo --, and then backdoor backdoor underscore TCP script, if I can type. Whoops. So if you run a sudo -- backdoor TCP script.rc, this should still run. We already have it as an executable file. It should just write over those files that I had created last time. This should work. We'll double check that. If not, we can go with the HTTP. But sudo -- and that backdoor TCP underscore script.rc, hit enter here. And it should run through that backdoor shortcut again. Okay, setting everything up. Created that same Trojan. It's just going to refire it back up. It's going to replace that Trojan. It kind of runs through everything. So here we go. We have that reverse TCP handler on this IP address running on port 31415. Okay. Will it work for everybody where it's now running a reverse TCP handler there? No news seems like good news. Okay. So it runs it. We have the reverse TCP handler going. What we need to do now is let's go to our Windows end. And if we open up Internet Explorer, we should actually be able to cheat here, because if we do a 10.1, it was loaded before. Nope, it's going to make me type it out. So I should know the IP by now, but it's 113.7. And then that's going to be a /. And it is, sorry, I got to scroll back up to remember what it is. TCP Trojan.exe. TCP Trojan.exe is one word. So your IP or Kali IP address / TCP Trojan.exe. Sorry if that's so small to read, but that's my IP address 10.1.113.7 / TCP Trojan.exe. I'm going to hit enter there. You should see this run again. So let's make the mistake and click run. Ignore the setting or ignore the warnings here. Run. Okay. Now I'm back in the interpreter. I'm sorry, back in my Kali, and notice that the interpreter session is now open. Okay. Interpreter session has opened. Okay, we have that backdoor opened again. And what we're going to do here is we got to do this kind of quick. So we only have 13 minutes, but what's going to happen here is I am going to actually go get it here. So if I go to our course and if I search for the RapBot, oops, it's not going to, it's going to bring up that first. There we go. So the RapBot lab, and I'm going to actually open it up and show you. These are two scripts that I never remember. I know it's a flag U and a flag A. That kind of go with this, but it's a persistence script. So here we go. Here's the two things that we're going to run here. Looks kind of ugly because these things show up at different times, but it's a run persistence flag capital A. The A stands for it's going to automatically talk back to the handler. A flag lowercase I and the number 15. That's the interval. Every 15 seconds, it's going to attempt to connect back. Every 15 seconds. So obviously, if we made that 60, every minute it would attempt to connect back. So we can change that number. And then we're going to attempt to connect back on port. And man, if I can talk here. The port we chose in this lab is 7171. We took that 1717 and reversed it. Okay. We're also going to run this and change the A for a U. This is when the Windows user logs in. Okay. So this is automatically when the machine's powered up. This is when the user logs in. So we figure at some point when they shut the machine off and on, it's going to turn on. So that's when it's going to go with that A. And then the flag U is when the user logs in. Okay, so that's the difference between those. But let me go ahead and run this. I'm going to put this on my other screen so I can see it there. And let me do a run persistence. And then it's going to be everybody's faces are on my way there. Here we go. Flag capital A, flag lowercase I 15. Remember, that's an interval of 15 seconds. Flag for the port number is 7171. And there does need to be a space between that 15 and flag P there. There we go. Okay. So run persistence, a flag capital A flag lowercase I with the number 15 after it, a flag lowercase p with the port number of 7171. So every 15 seconds, it's going to automatically try and talk back to the handler on port 7171. Hit enter, and this should install the script. I'm actually going to run through everything that just happened with us here. So it happens very quickly, but it installs that script. Here's actually where it installs it. Or actually, that's on, sorry, that's on the Kali end. This is the script it installs and where it's located. That's how actually, if you run that file, actually delete it from the system. Here's where it's actually stored on the Windows machine, that user student app data local temp. And it's stored as this file right here. Looks like a great file. It should be a random string of characters.vbs. That's the file it's stored at on the Windows machine. Okay, it actually executes that file and it actually brings it back. Here's the process ID of it. Notice that it starts the handler. Notice it's running Windows Interpreter reverse TCP. It does not have that x64 in there. Okay, just keep that in mind. It does not have the x64. If you click the up arrow, and we're going to go back and replace that flag capital A with a capital U as in unicorn. Okay, that capital U or umbrella. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to run through all that again. Notice here it stores it this time as this. Mine was a UKU, ends with uwd.vbs. It still ran that same script. Where can I find it here? There it is. Windows Interpreter reverse TCP. No x64 there. Okay, but it installed those, and so no matter what, we can connect back to this. Okay, so what I want to show everyone. And so typically at this point, we have us actually turn off the machines and turn them back on and connect to it. But we're not going to do that because we only have 9 minutes. We're not going to spend a lot of that time basically shutting it down, turning them back on. And so what I want to do is I want everybody to go ahead and exit out of everything on this Kali end. So let's just exit. Oh, come on. It's gonna keep reconnecting until there we go. So Control C will stop everything. Control and C. That'll stop everything. And then run exit. It's going to make me, active sections. So exit flag Y. Yes, I want to shut them all down. Whew. Exit again. All right, so everything should have been shut down. So this allows us to basically start fresh. No backdoors are open. It's not talking. Okay, and like I said, typically we'd have us shut machines down, turn it back on. If you have the time tonight after this workshop, please shut the machines down, turn it back on, and try and reconnect, and it'll show that it can reconnect. Okay, but what I want us to do, and we're going to have to do this very quickly, is let's open up a new terminal, and we're going to connect to that rat that's automatically talking now, and we're going to do a sudo msf console to open up Metasploit again. We've done this how many times tonight, but sudo msf console. We have to set the local host, the payload, and the port number. That's all we have to do now. So we can say a use multi-dash handler. I know I'm going very fast with this. I'm sorry. Trying to make sure we have time for questions too, but use multi-handler. Bartles or Shanace, are you able to type these in the chat real quick? So I'm going to go kind of quick. But use multi-dash handler once in Metasploit. That's going to be a set payload. And this is actually going to be a little bit different. It's Windows Interpreter and then reverse underscore TCP. Notice there's no x64 in it this time. No x64 right there. Remember that when I showed it when it was installed, it showed that no x64 was involved with it. So just Windows Interpreter reverse TCP. Set L port. Now remember from that script when we ran the run persistence, we did a flag P. The port number was 7171, backwards 1717. And then lastly, we had to set the L host is 10.1.113.7. Remember, that's your IP address. If you need that, you can open a new terminal and do a host name flag I again. Oh boy, put a space in there. Ah, not there. There we go. All right, hostname flag I. That brings up your IP address. So mine is 113.7. So everything should be set now. And like I said, if you turn your machines off, turn them back on and run this same stuff, it's going to reconnect back to that bot. Okay. So from here, we can just run our exploit, and it should, within 15 seconds, depending on where you go. Obviously, if it checked again in 2 seconds, it'll connect then. But if it could take up to 15 seconds to reconnect to that, basically that backdoor session. There, mine open. Notice there's actually 2 that open, because remember we ran that persistence twice, but it should connect right back up, and we're able to connect back into that Windows machine whenever we want. So yeah. Any questions? Any answers? Let me see here. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to take, or I should be able to change this so that people can come off mute. Now, I don't know if anybody is willing to unmute themselves, but I guess if you have questions about anything, I gave you the option. Everybody should be able to unmute themselves now if you have a question, but we have 5 minutes left in the day. If anyone has any questions about anything. So Bartles, Shanae, anything to add?
I do.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
Okay, so where's my scripting class?
Where's your what?
I thought you were supposed to do a workshop on creating scripts.
We do need to add that. Yeah, it's actually in the it's in the works for our labs that are going to be added by June. Not to give everybody too much looks into it, but that is one of the labs, Robin, that we plan on adding by June. So I bet you it'll be in our boot camp this year. Is that our segue into the boot camp advertisement?
Because you had mentioned that I thought it was going to be in January, so I was like, "We're looking for it. Looking for it." I said, "Wait a minute, where is it?"
Yeah, I think our goal is, I think it's like 2 labs are going to be depreciated and kind of go away, and then I think, what did we say, Bartles and Shanae? We're going to add around 10 labs by June was our goal, somewhere in there. So we'll be adding about 10 new labs for the summer update. We don't like to do that before summer, just to throw teachers off and change the course. So in June, we'll add those to it. But yeah, scripting is on the list, and I would assume that's one that gets picked up. But yeah, so if you go to cyber.org/events, I'm still sharing my screen, right? Everybody can see this. Here we go, our 2 boot camps. We have one in June 13th to 17th, the Monday through Friday, and then a Monday through Friday in July, the 18th through 22nd. Those we will for sure touch upon the new labs as well, Robin. So when we have the scripting lab, that should be a part of those.
Is that during the evenings or during the day?
Those are during the day. Those are we put you to work.
No, I did one last year with you, but I don't know if I can make those dates. I have to.
Well, they'll all be recorded. If you ever need the recordings, you can let us know. When we
but
say
I like doing it, because then I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I said I prefer to do them live than to have just the recordings.
Sure.
I'll see what I can do. I know the 13th to the 17th, I'm still in school.
Okay, we have one in July too. I don't know if you want to come to that one, July 18 to 22 as well. They're the same boot camp.
I'll let you know in 2 seconds if I can.
Yeah.
If I can make it, I'll be there.
2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, or depending on where you are in America. And then we have homework as well. So we put you to work, don't worry. But those are, we'll start you from scratch at Linux 101, and this lab plus some web application attacks will be some of the last ones. So.
Oh, okay. So that week might work, because I'm going away the following week. Okay.
Yep. Cool.
That'd be great. And I think I'm going to email you some questions.
Sure.
On some of the labs that I'm having an issue with.
Yeah, you totally, anytime.
Thank you so much. You're always awesome.
Thanks for coming. Any other questions or anything?
I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Chris. Or Mr. P. Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I was sort of looking, as you were showing us some of the things we could do. I was looking at like screenshot or something like that. I wanted something that I could show my students that would be sort of impressive to them, but I noticed that before we did privilege escalation, it wouldn't let me take a screenshot.
Yeah.
And once we did privilege escalation, the screenshot just showed a logon screen.
Yeah, it's the login there. So it's something weird with, it's like AWS is shutting it down, but we you want to show your kids is what you're saying, Chris?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to show them, what a hacker could be looking at or doing on their machine. And since they don't have cameras attached, I thought a screenshot might be, good, but.
So what I might be able to do, and this might open a can of worms for me, especially with everybody else here. Bartles, we could give access to a different range environment, kind of one that we've created, and we can see if it works on there and see to make it work. But yeah, the way the US Cyber Range has it set up, I know exactly what you're talking about. You see the login will say administrator, student, and I think like a guest or some other login, depending on who's logged in at the time. And you kind of can't see around those. You can set different desktops, but yeah, it doesn't really work well. That's why we don't really access that. Whereas normally it's because you're remote desktoping in, Chris, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The remote desktop doesn't look like someone's actually logged in on a desktop on like a physical machine. If you were to do this on a laptop, when you log in and you're seeing that on your laptop, that's the desktop they're seeing then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're remote desktoping in, so it doesn't, they aren't able to really see that. So it kind of stinks, but that's kind of what they're using there. But we're using VNC on the other one. Bartles, we haven't tested it yet, but we could test it, Chris, and see if we can get that to work. And if it does, we can give you access to that for whatever class periods you need it, and you can use there. So
all right, appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other?
Would you be interested in doing anything with like mobile instead of like a Windows machine that you could get into and get access to?
So we've actually talked about this. So you can still see my screen, right? If I go to exit interpreter here, and if we do like a search and we do iOS, there is a ton of like iOS exploits here, and the same goes for Android. If we were to search, I'm not sure if Android will pop it up. Yeah. So here's Android devices. Yeah, one thing I like to stress with people: the Metasploit contains not just for Windows, not just for Linux, not just for a Mac operating system, but yeah, mobile systems as well as servers, as well as all sorts of different machines, printers, all sorts of different things. But the problem that we have with the phones is every teacher is going to have a different one. We have a hard time writing it. Like if we wrote a lab for what Bartles, help me, I can't even know, a Nokia brick phone. If we wrote one for that, chances are, Ms. Free, say you had that, Chris may not, Jenny may not, Renee may not. It's hard for us to figure out a phone that everybody has, if that makes sense. So at this point, we don't have one. I don't know if those are in the works right now or not, but I understand it'd be really cool, but I have a hard time envisioning how we could get that so every teacher across America could use it. So I guess
that
that's
makes
the
sense.
problem. Yeah. So any other questions? Great question so far. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording. Everybody has our emails. I guess I could throw that slide back up, Bartles. It has our emails. Shanice. Let's see here, but here's our emails. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You do have access to this environment until the end of next month. So you got just over a month to use this environment. So please use it up, try any all labs. Let us know if you need help with anything. So, but with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.